Good morning. Welcome to another Kerfuffle showcase. I am delighted today to have Nick Lyons here. How are you, Nick?
Very well, thank you. Very well. All the better for seeing you, of course.
You're too kind. You're too kind. Okay. No Letting Go is obviously your fantastic company, Nick.
Yeah, my baby.
Your little bit. Well, look, I know how that feels. This little pink baby of mine as well. It's coming here. And we're here today to talk about, obviously, an introduction, Nick, but to talk about as well inventory and compliance made simple. I think we were just having a little bit of a giggle off air there, weren't we? We were talking about it's the area that nobody really wants to have to do, but is absolutely vital and necessary to do, isn't it?
It is always that. It's that. We used to laugh that it was always the last person in got given the inventory work. In a letting agency, so
and then you decided to make an entire business of it. Love it.
Absolutely. I thought that was a niche.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's just, for those people that don't know, and I mean, I think when we're coming through this, the size and scale of the business, it will very clearly reinforce, obviously, your position in the marketplace. But for those that don't know, just give us an idea. Who are No Letting Go, and why are NLG so unique?
Well, it's interesting because if I probably the easiest way to explain it is to go back a little bit to when I first set the business up. I originally came out of the search business, so the guys that do the conveyancing searches and that neck of the woods. And what happened is that all the hips was going a bit mental at the time, back in sort of 2004, 5, around that sort of period. And I looked at the Housing Act in 2004 had a piece of legislation related to deposits, which we all know about now, of course, around deposit protection, but it hadn't come in at the time. And so, I was looking at that part of looking at that piece of legislation. I had a whole range of skill sets in that arena, and I thought, there's a bit of an opportunity. They're bringing in legislation related to deposit protection. The one thing they're going to need is evidence. Yeah. You can't make a claim against something without any evidence. So I set about to build a business around providing evidence. My focus was to provide to have a consistent product across the UK. And I set the business up early 2007 and decided, okay, this is what I wanted to do. And actually, interestingly, when I did a whole load of due diligence in the early days, and I spoke to loads and loads of agents, 2005, 2006, 2007, this time, and sort of saying to them, right, okay, do you know about the legislation? What's happening? What's your problems with suppliers? And there were three big things that come out of it. So, and people were saying to me, we have a massive problem with consistency. Variation between suppliers and reporting and that sort of thing, and a big problem with reliable suppliers. Yeah, and then the last one was a real issue around accountability. People not taking accountability for when they made mistakes. And the problem with evidence-based business is it's quite subjective. What's clean to me, clean to you, clean to somebody else is quite subjective. So I made those the core values, and then set No Letting Go up and said, look, if we get that right, those three elements right, then I think it will serve a brilliant service to the lettings market, and set about on this journey to do that. If you show that first slide, Si.
Yeah, let me just check that I can do this. My technical skills are look at that.
So if you look at over this 12, 14 year sort of, what is it now? 2007, so 13 years. I'm testing my maths now. 13 years in the industry. In the inventory business, we're now at over 75 regional offices. So, so it's a decent size business. We provide cover to anyone on a national level. So we've actually got something like 400 or so clerks on the ground, clerks and inspectors on the ground, providing service to around about 2,500 letting agents, letting estate agents, and of course in the landlord market as well.
So a truly national service, basically,
Truly national service, yeah, absolutely. It's very much focused on a whole range of letting agents to sort of cover all their needs, if you like, on that side.
And why did you, obviously looking at that amount, why did you go down the franchise model? What was the thinking there?
Well, it's quite interesting because I had experience, I've experienced in the corporate world, I've experienced in being employed models in place, and also was for my sins was a franchisee for Remax back a number of years ago. I had 3 of their offices.
The big red balloons.
Yeah, the big red balloons. So I had 3 good offices in Kent at the time in the early days. So I had a lot of experience of being a franchisee.
Okay.
And the one thing I loved about a franchising model is that you have ownership. So what happens is that people buy into a business, of course, and they have ownership. The one thing you need in the property industry, particularly in the lettings industry, is you need people who are going to be incredibly flexible. Tenants don't do what you expect them to do. Landlords don't necessarily do what you expect them to do. Property managers are constantly under pressure to they're sitting in this position where they've got to meet loads of legislation, deal with the whims of tenants and landlords, and a lot of it's very locally driven. We talk about the property industry on a national scale, but actually it's loads of local companies dealing with local issues, local people, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So when I looked at how I was going to set the business up, I understood that really the best way to deliver an exceptional service was to have local people dealing with local clients at a local level. And even at national level, you're still dealing with local level people. Yeah. And I wanted that flexibility. If the job needed to be done on a Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, then, I needed motivated people to do that. And it just worked. It just worked for me on that level. And it's proved to be the case because we've got an amazing group of people across the UK.
Well, those are just huge numbers, obviously, just to look at there. It's such a, there's a lot of people that talk about their ability to service, nationally, but really it feels like they're chancing their arm there. It's not quite the full service proposition that you've clearly got a tick in the box, as you literally got a tick in the box on all of these points on the left-hand side.
Yeah, it is quite interesting because, of course, from one of the big challenges, and anyone that's in the lettings industry will know this, is that, firstly, you're only as good as your last job.
Yeah.
So you're very much, because it can be quite emotive, evidence-based businesses, because you're moving in, tenants are moving in, they want the place to be as they expect it to be. If it's not as clean as it should be, they're not happy about it, etc., etc. At the end of the tenancy, of course, the checkout, there's money involved. Who's going to get the money? When's it going to come back? There's always a debate around that. The negotiation, of course, of that process is part of the role of a letting agent. So there's certain elements that are quite critical in the process, and really important parts of it. You need good people around you at the time.
Yeah, and speaking of good people, Mr. Byfield's popped up just to say as if perfectly on cue. So that franchise model, as you said yourself, really allowed you to tap into the local talent. It sounds like that when delivering a localized service, of course, is absolutely vital, isn't it?
Well, it is, and what's interesting, particularly with the franchising model, of course, is that when we look for people, when we're recruiting franchisees, we're not, we don't just say, great, you've got the money, come in and join us. We're looking for a certain set of skills, and they're mostly soft skills. We know the property industry. We have a really comprehensive training process and schedule that goes on for a good period of time. There's tests, there's all kinds of stuff, so we can provide all that information. But what we can't provide is, and what we look for is soft skills, is attitude, empathy, understanding of problem solving, all those different issues that you need to deal with. We're taking a lot of problems away from property managers, so they rely on us to do a job. So that's a critical part of our process.
Yeah, and look, you're well known as well, obviously, for the capture and inventory software as well. How was you? I think you mentioned at the beginning, you're very tech led. How has technology helped shape your business over the years?
Well, it's quite interesting because back in 2009, 2010, I did, prior in my previous working life, I worked in technology. I was involved in supply chain business in my 20s, and I learned an enormous amount about that. And when I set No Letting Go up, I really understood that in order for the business for me to manage a consistent product across the UK and have audit trails and make sure that everything is controlled, I needed to be able to give visibility to our clients. I needed the means for me to police it, if you like, at a quality level. So I built this database system. Looking back at it now, we were using dictaphones and cameras. I had a team in New Zealand typing stuff up at the time, and we were all on Word documents.
Yeah.
It used to take us ages. We used to print. We used to bind and print inventories, give one to the tenant, physically sign it, give one to the agent signed as well. So these things were all hard copies, and we used to upload them into the system as Word files. So it was very early days, very basic data. And then, of course, what happened, we started moving into data fields, and we're getting our typists to type into data fields because we wanted to control that data. And then eventually, as smart technology came around, of course, we started building our inventories, coming away from dictaphones, still using dictation, within our software, but really integrating, focusing on the client's user experience, if you like. How can we improve that? And of course, the whole industry became a lot more professionalized. And then, of course, in time, we were improving all of our process, and then of course different prop tech companies crop up, like Chris is just on from Depository, so you've got companies like that. Chris understands that that end of the process very well. We've got other companies have got Raj from Fixed Flow, of course he set up that business. All of these things are part of that process, and how do we interact with those organizations as well? There's quite a lot of process gets involved in that. But what happened with Capture was quite interesting, because we had a number of clients that said to us, Nick, you're looking after us on a national level. You're our independent provider. We outsource all the inventories and checkouts, but we actually do our midterms in-house. And so they would say, could we possibly use your software? Because actually, with GDPR coming in, we'd rather it all goes into one data point. We don't want to use 10 different systems. We don't want to use 100 different inventory companies. What we want is to control that element of the business all in one place. And, can you provide us that flexibility? And at the time I was, I don't know, this is my own internal bit of software, but the more we looked at it, we went, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. Here we're looking at what do our clients need. And our clients were saying, we want this sort of combination. We want some of our guys in-house to do some of the work, and we want you to do the rest of it. So we combined that process, offered that as a service at that time, to a couple of our largest clients. And Capture was formed out of that. So it didn't have a brand up to then. It was called PIMS internally, not for the drinking purpose, but and Capture was formed out of that. So it was very much a product that came as a result of our clients asking us for it, as opposed to a brilliant idea by mine.
Yeah, not like some of these ones born in an ivory tower and then really don't have a use, do they? It's driven by needs of the clients. It's funny you're talking there about we're looking back wistfully about the days of things like dictaphones and everything else. But I suppose one thing you at least you could go to the pub for a pint back then. But that's probably yeah, exactly. Sorry, it's because it's Friday. It's particularly hard on me these days. Well. Christian's just jumped in, just reiterating what you had to say there. Quality inventory clerks definitely have a skill set primarily being organised, and having an eagle eye for detail is essential. I think that's
yeah, and that's that is critical, and it goes back to the point I was saying about when we recruit people, we look for soft skills, and that's an example of some of those skill sets. Doesn't really matter what industry you come from. If you have that eye for detail, if you have that focus on ensuring that, you've got to have some good interpersonal skills, because you're dealing with tenants, you're dealing with landlords, often property managers, and all critical.
Do you find any particular industry that works well in this? Sometimes you see, like, famously, recruitment people come into a state agency and bounce back and forth. Is there a particular other vertical industry that has those skills in abundance?
Do you know what? We often, over the years, we've looked at avatars, the ideal franchisee. Who do we look for? And we have got such an eclectic mix of people in the Notice to Go business from their backgrounds. We probably most people, and probably about 25% of the offices, have property. So when they've seen No Letting Go, they've sort of got it. Okay, I know this. So probably the link is the fact that they're landlords, generally speaking, sort of small time landlord, if you like, but we've got people ranging from mid-20s to 75. I mean, we got we a few years ago we won the Olderpreneur competition.
I haven't heard of that.
It's a lovely name, isn't it? So we won that as a guy called Charles that runs our office in West Berkshire and Oxfordshire, that neck of the woods, and he's in his 70s. He's a fantastic guy. He's run nightclubs before. He comes from the sort of the hospitality world. Right. Very switched on guy. Great guy. Great personality. But we've got people that come from, got teachers. We've got people from the IT world. We've got some people out of retail. Consultants. A whole range of people.
So it really is hire for attitude, train for skill. Then, yeah,
it is absolutely, and we have got, I think, probably about 10% or 15% people have come from where they've had small inventory companies and they've converted over. They sort of would want to be part of a larger group rather than like a run a small operation, and they've done very well out of it, because obviously.
Have you got space for more franchisees, or is that it?
When I carved up the country in the early days,
Game of Thrones style, yeah.
Winston Churchill. So when I looked at that, but we had about 150 or so territories, but that of course includes Highlands of Scotland and sort of west coast of Wales and Northern Ireland and stuff. But we've got now pretty much all of the student cities covered, and if it's an area we haven't got covered, we cover it from a neighbouring office. So we, a lot of our clients are people that want to service nationwide. The franchise market deal with all of the independents, all of the guys that are sort of probably 1 to 10 offices will, generally speaking, deal with the local offices, and then we'll deal with people on a whether it's an online company or whether it's people like the Your Moves of this world and et cetera. So everything in between, which makes the model work very well.
And approximately how many offices do you service from those 75 offices?
So we've got around about 2,500 agents that we deal with. Some we're primary supplier, some we're one of 3 or 4 or 5 suppliers. But that's 2,500 agents we deal with on a regular basis. And then, of course, on top of that, we deal with some landlords, across the market. Most of our business, pretty much nearly all of it, is agency. Okay. We're a B2B company. We don't get too involved in landlords unless they really want us to.
Yeah. And your business is is all about consistently meeting people. Really, obviously that's been curtailed to a large degree with the COVID pandemic. So, what's been your approach during this whole kind of lockdown out of lockdown, back into lockdown?
Well, do you know what it was? I mean, obviously, at the end of March, we came into April. There was a lot of concern into the market. I mean, fortunately, because obviously we have a branded structure and we have all the control mechanisms in place. One of the things that we obviously took it very seriously, like everyone else did, and we implemented processes and procedures straight away across the whole market. And so in the early part of April, of course, we implemented processes on the basis of all the 2 meter, all the government recommendations got put in across the whole network. But the other element that we certainly put in place from a checkout perspective was that we, at that time, we allowed 48 hours before we went and did a checkout, for example. So when the person left, usually with a checkout, you're meeting them on site, going through the process. We implemented a 48-hour process where they left, they dropped the keys off with the agent. We then went 48 hours later. We were sterilising keys as well, which we still do to this day. So we're picking up keys, doing things like leaving keys on the wall, and stepping back, and so there's a whole range of stuff that we do. Probably the area that got hit hardest, Simon, was the midterms. We do an incredible amount of midterm inspections across the market for a lot of our clients, and we're meeting people, a lot of vulnerable people, of course. So we had to stop those. Arla obviously had recommended to the market anyway that made some adjustments in that way. So that's been quite tricky. And now what we've done is we've introduced a whole series of tools with our technology to enable midterms to carry on, because at the end of the day, that it's a contractual requirement under most tenancy agreements, and they have to be done in one form or another. So we've introduced things like tenants being able to do some self-checking. We've been involved in we look after the whole process anyway, so we will call tenants in advance, and if they have to be there, obviously we'll turn up with gloves and masks and get them to step outside the house or stay in different rooms while we go through things. So there's a whole series of processes gone in.
It really is, isn't it? It's a big amount. It's a big amount to add on top of what is. It wasn't like you were quiet beforehand, was it? Put all this to make it happen can't be understated, can it? Really, in terms of the new challenge.
Yeah, it's tricky, and I think the probably the biggest at the end of the day, what's I think has been amazing with the industry is how the industry has adapted. Our clients, and I'm sure this is the same with all of my competitors and other suppliers in the market. The letting agents, they're great bunch of people. So people have adapted really well to them and said, okay, we've got to get this done. How are we going to do it? So things like we're picking up keys from people's houses, because obviously the property man, we've got to get access to keys to get in. How do we do that? We're handing stuff over to cleaners and different people. So there's been a sort of like a coming together of the property industry to try and solve the problems, which I think is amazing. Really, really.
Well, you're absolutely right, aren't they? I often say that the "all in this together" mantra is often just thrown out there quite lazily, and property in particular, estate agents have been accused of not keeping up with the times, whether that's technology or legislation or anything else there, and it's awfully unfair, because if you see, obviously, as you said, they obviously, like everyone, we hit a brick wall like that with lockdown, but it was literally a matter of weeks before people started pivoting and changing the model and just getting on with it. I don't want to overplay the kind of blitz spirit, because of course we still had people fighting in the supermarkets for toilet roll. Absolutely. The industry itself really didn't it? As you said, did a really good job of just getting on with it.
Yeah, and I think through April we still had a lot of work going on, because there was processes have already started that had to be finished. Fortunately, the property market was allowed to kickstart on the 1st of June, so we were impacted probably less than many many industries. And of course, we've bounced back partly with the stamp duty adjustments, and so the industry has sort of bounced back quite quickly. But we're a the industry provides shelter at the end of the day, which is a requirement for all of us. So that market has to go on. It's a strong underlying market, and has to be serviced. And there's an enormous amount of regulation and compliance sitting in it, which
as strong an argument for being essential workers as you can have, really, isn't it? Christian, Mr. Byfield, just going back on that point you were talking about earlier as well, anything systemised should be automated. If you don't add value as a human, use a robot. We'd expect that from Mr. Techie himself. But he also talks about that recruitment piece as well. Hospitality is a great source. Many of our best staff at base have come to us from hospitality. That customer first mindset is a great starting point. I agree with Christian on that wholeheartedly.
Christian's business, of course, is in Shoreditch, which has a lot of access in central London to a lot of the hospitality market, and there are some fantastic people in that market. We've got a lot of people from the hospitality market, actually. Our new office in Sheffield, we opened in Sheffield about 3 or 4 months ago. And the fantastic guy that's come on, he comes from the hospitality market, and a brilliant team of people. He's started and sort of kicked off fantastic. He's got a fantastic operation there. Done really well.
And I mean, apart from the fact that we're all sat in the middle of a global pandemic, from your point of view, what are the biggest challenges running a nationwide inventory business like this?
Well, when I set out to provide consistent, reliable, and accountable service, it's delivering on those guarantees, and I wholeheartedly commit to delivering on that. And I put guarantees around these, so managing that and managing the inspectors that each of the offices bring on a class. We have ongoing training. A lot of it's done these days on Zoom, of course, because of course we can't get on site in certain areas. But we're constantly training. We've got CPD programs going on. We train our offices to properly manage your levels. So we're not just teaching you how to do inventories. We're looking at tenancy agreements. We're looking at deposit schemes. We're looking at the legalities. Our clients are property managers, so therefore we need to understand all the different elements that our business impacts on, and how we're here to help you solve problems and come up with solutions. So we need to know what sort of thing. So we have ongoing programs of training that happens on a constant basis. We've got a full-time team that look after that side of things. And then we've got people on the ex-adjudicators who work for us here that look at how do we solve problems around negotiation issues. I've got this problem. What do I do? How do I solve it? And that sort of thing. So there's a lot of activity, and all this is all wrapped into the tech as well. So a lot of stuff around that.
And tech's obviously often there to help you adapt, isn't it? And so, talking about adapting, how do you see the future of the lettings industry changing? On the belief that we come out of this, this hopefully COVID period relatively quickly. What do you think the prospects are?
Well, I think that shout me down anyone that disagrees with me on this, but I think we will probably. We're coming away from this sort of high street mentality and model, and I think as far as letting agents are concerned, I think that there's some fantastic technology on the market helping that whole process. So I think there will be more centralised lettings operations and less high street from a personal point of view. I have to say it will be a little bit more like the US model, if you like, perspective. And I think the technology that's coming out onto the market will accelerate that. Well, you can see a little bit of that because, of course, a lot of large lettings organisation or estate agent letting agencies centralise their property management into hubs, regional hubs or whatever.
So that you can get those efficiencies in, basically.
So you're combining the technology elements to get rid of, if you like, or systemize all those admin processes that you've got to put people at, and then you combine that with good people on the ground. Someone still has to go to a property at some point.
Yeah.
But what you want to do is make that as efficient as possible. Focus on meeting all the relevant needs, and fundamentally protect the downside. Legislation never goes away. Regulation. I think I can't remember what the last count was. I think it was way past 140, or even I think somebody once said it was 160 pieces of legislation just to rent a house these days. Christian will probably know more than me, but certainly 3-4 years ago there was 140 pieces of legislation just to rent a house. And that's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? And Nick, from your point of view, in terms of people wanting to get involved with you, how do you onboard clients? How long does it roughly take to get up and working? And how do you make sure they're getting the most out of No Letting Go as a business on an ongoing basis?
Well, we as a business, we're very much a full service company. So we look at now we've sort of moved from inventory management services. We're sort of boots on the ground, so we're very much about delivering a whole range of services that fit into our sort of core skill set, if you like. Yeah. But when a client comes on board, we have an onboarding process. If they're coming on board with a local regional office, those guys would have already met them at this stage anyway. So we're still very old school, face to face. We like that approach to the business. You need to trust us, see us, etc., etc. The larger companies that we deal with across regional, myself and the team, people like Lisa Williamson and Justine here, we get heavily involved in that process, because we look to see, what are you trying to achieve? Are you looking to centralise your property management, and therefore you're looking for one inventory company? You're looking for 2 or 3 inventory companies? Have you got, are you in the student market? Do you have a problem with a massive peak in the summer? We look at your business. How do we combine our capture services, capture software with our No Letting Go services? How does that work? We have all kinds of processes. We have automated check-ins, for example. So, when the tenant fee ban came in a couple of years back, we engineered out that process. We were doing inventories and check-ins and check-outs, and of course, now you couldn't charge a tenant for a check-in, so we actually engineered that out and offered it as a free service to our clients. So, look, let's put a bit of tech in. It's one of the areas where tech has been amazing. Yeah. We've automated that process and engineered out. So there's a whole range of, far too many for me to talk about now, but a whole range of features that our service offers, people-wise, and the tech and the combination of. So we sit down with the clients and say, right, okay, let's have a chat, see if we can go through it and see what we need. And then actually onboarding and getting things going is pretty instantaneous. We're big enough and ugly enough and been in the game long enough to know what we have to do to get things working.
Well, I certainly know a large number of those 2,500, businesses that you're talking about, and they're certainly, they set high expectation levels, so you wouldn't have that caliber of client on board, and indeed that number of clients without the ability to deliver ultimately. Nick, it just, it's a fairly obvious point, isn't it? And talking about the clients, do you have an ideal demographic of client in terms of the size of them, or do you just look across the entire industry?
We look. I mean, we're in lettings. Our bag is lettings and property management. We don't steer too far in that. We do some work in estate management as well, because it naturally falls into that. So we get involved in inspections for the estate management market, the leaseholder market, if you like. But our core market is letting agent property management companies as well. Yeah. So we get involved in the corporate let side. We get involved in the buy to let side. We get involved in any property professional that's dealing with that market. And really, all of the leads, anything that comes into us, I'm very active in the market still. So I'm not one of these sort of guys that sort of sat back and in Spain or anything.
You're not like me.
Not that I can go anywhere, but very much active in that. I like to know who we've got on board. I like to look at where we can improve the company all the time, how we can continually add value. So I'd like to be very much involved in that process. But broadly speaking, in terms of our clients at regional level, if you're dealing with a Manchester office or a Liverpool office or Sheffield or Exeter, whatever the case happens to be, you talk to those guys and they will offer you a service that's bespoke to you locally. And of course, anyone that's large regional. So if you're looking at people like the Foxtons, the Bradleys, the sort of Walden Partners, those sort of regional type of organisations, or anyone that's nationwide, then we'll deal with them as a national account office, and you have a key account manager here that looks after it. We've got a big team of guys internally and essentially then the franchise organisation works as subcontractors to us. It's like one massive inventory company, if you like, in that sense.
And with that, you don't have to go into too much specifics unless you want to. But what's the price point of No Letting Go? Are you, sort of where do you feel you position yourself? Apart from what you're going to tell me fairly.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting because like the lettings industry, the inventory market is a mature price. So if you go too high, you outprice yourself out of the market. But equally, if you go too low, you can't be in a property long enough to get the level of detail you require, and and as a result, there's a natural price point, and every inventory company will tell you this. If people come in and say, I can do all your work for 30 quid a visit or something like that, then we'd all say, great. We know that you can't go into a property and pick up a certain amount of information for that. It just takes time, to get the devil's in the detail.
Absolutely, and in that detail, you've been really, really kind in coming up with a nice deal for our Kerfuffle members as well here. I'll pop it up on screen, but do you want to just give an overview of what you're going to be willing to provide?
Yeah, what I'm sort of, proposing is that is actually to first and foremost is to spend some time with anyone that's interested in these services, and all the other services that we do, which I'll get you to quickly sort of show that slide if you've got a chance, which is with the sort of the wrap, if you like. Now, next one.
I'll get the next one for you. Yep, that one there. That one?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, we do these days, we do a whole range of services, going from pre-tenancy all the way around. So we get involved in areas such as posting abandonment notices, posting letters for section 2021s, and we get involved in doing pre-let reporting. So the whole range, there's a whole range of stuff that needs to be done on site. And so part of what I'm offering as part of the Kerfuffle deal is we're going to spend some time with you to sort of look at your process procedures and see what can work, and whether it's working with your other suppliers, whether it's working with using some of No Letting Go services. I'm going to come at it from that perspective. We've got adjudicators on site. We could look at your if you've got a high level of adjudications, or properties going to adjudication, you need to address that. We'll have a look at that as well. So
so you're really trying to understand what the client's needs are before trying to even specify what you can do.
Yeah. So if you like, it's time to look at this section of the market. And on top of that as well, if you decide to use our as part of the recommendations, you use some software, we'll give you a great deal on the software side as well. So we'll give you some free use of the software for a period of time. So
You said 3 months, didn't you? Is that right? Is it?
So we were 3 months, and as many reports as you want to get involved in that. So if you want to squeeze in those 1,000 midterms that you haven't done, then absolutely.
Perfect time of year in the run up to Christmas. Things starting to quiet down. We can review. Now's the time to start looking at your supplier ecosystem, isn't it, and deciding who are the right partners for you for 2021. So thank you for the. So from my point of view, Nick, looking at, we've known each other years, obviously looking at you as a business here, my takeaway is really in terms of why they should be looking at you as a business. Your track record, obviously, the size and scale of your business, over 70,000 reports per year with less than 0.1% going to dispute. That says everything you need to know.
I think we're very proud of that.
It's just incredible. The flexibility, over 75 offices, over 400 no letting go clerks across the UK, with the ability for you to book and track reports remotely. Again, with having, as we spoke about, you having to pivot the business, and you've done that amazing. And then underpinned again by some fantastic technology, automatic tenant sign off, lifetime storage of reports, in-house software option. And the list goes on, doesn't it? Really. So I think that's there's a really good triple whammy there, isn't it, of reasons why they should pick up the phone. And if you do want to, please do go direct to Nick and obviously just mention you're a Kerfuffle member, or go to their landing page, see a bit more information. If you click on the "I'm interested" button, we'll obviously forward on the details.
Yeah, Nick, and it's worth saying. It's worth pointing out as well, in light of the fact that Christian has put a couple of posts in as well. Is that we're working a lot with people like Christian on Depository and Fixflow, TechLet. We're fully integrated with those guys, so there's a lot of added value on that side of things.
Really exciting.
Super.
Fantastic, Nick. Well, look, absolutely great. Great to catch up with you on a Friday again, and soon we'll be able to go for a drink. But for now, thank you very much, Nick.
Lovely. Take care. Cheers, Simon.